are. All right. Welcome to Policy Committee Meeting 2 for the month of September. Thank you all for joining me and giving your extra time for this arduous process. So I guess we'll call the meeting to order. I see Dr. Maddox and Mr. Davis and myself as a quorum. I don't believe Dr. Gant can join us today. And we have Dr. Anderson here as a guest, and Ms. Davis, I see you. I don't see your face, but I see you here. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello. And Mr. Schuneman, Mr. Pruitt, and Dr. Thomas and Angela Tillman. So we're all here. We have a few left to finish up, hopefully in time to put on the work session for Thursday. Again, we've been reviewing the D policies and the K policies. The D policies were myself, Ms. Gallagher, and Mr. Shineman working through, and then the K policies were Mr. Davis, Mr. Harris, and you had Karina's help on that one too, a little bit?
We did.
And okay, so let's, the first two on the agenda, oh, we should have, we have to do the minutes, right? Sorry. Did anybody look at the minutes from the last meeting? I think they were okay. I looked at them.
Yeah.
When it first went up. We need to approve the minutes from the last meeting then.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Okay. Dr. Maddox, can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Sorry, I gotta make my agenda a little bit larger so I can see it. I've lost my regular glasses, which is a big problem. So I've got these little readers, which are not really doing it. Okay, so do we want to amend and adopt the agenda? Amend or adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda as specified.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And Dr. Thomas, did you have any thing you wanted to say today?
No, man, just really excited. A couple of committees are planning additional meetings, not committees, let me take that back. Groups are planning meetings. Mr. Gaskins has some information to share with his team, and then you and I have just talked about meetings. So it seems like we're making good progress on getting this work accomplished. So I just appreciate everyone's commitment.
And I spoke with Mr. Fisher. He's got his team all working on October 1st as their target deadline. And so he and I are going to meet probably with Ms. Hull after the 1st of October.
Okay, he did share that when we were together a little earlier this afternoon that his were pretty close to finished as well. So he was excited about that.
Great. And Mr. Davis, are you working on the L&Ms?
I was going to talk to, I'm going to be working with Lawrence on that, right?
Yes.
So Lawrence has to show me shoot me some times about when he's available. So we haven't done that yet. So Lawrence, you just tell me when shoot me some times and because you're the one driving the train in terms of scheduling.
Will do, sir. I'll give them to you.
And Dr. Anderson, I think Dr. Gant was going to be in touch with you. Has that happened?
Sorry, I had to unmute.
That's okay.
Yes, we are trying to arrange something, and the last communications from everyone, I believe, has almost confirmed that next Tuesday, it looks like, will probably be the best time for us to get together. So it looks like sometime next Tuesday around 9:30 to 11.
Okay. So this is just a heads up, Mr. Pruitt. You're going to get a big pile coming at you in a week or so, hopefully with plenty of time to get it ready for the agenda setting meeting. Okay. All right, that's sort of my committee report as well. We're making progress. Shall we move on to the policies at hand? Okay, let me get my notes. So DFGA. All right, so this one has to do with admissions and gate receipts. We talked about it a little bit last time. There was some concern about just deleting the whole thing, which is what we had recommended because of the senior citizen discount. Mr. Harris, did we decide to try to keep that? Or are we still in the mode of deleting completely?
So I spoke with both our athletic directors, and they actually there is a senior citizen gold club card that they do honor at all athletic events and different productions at the school. So they said that is in practice right now. So we could keep that first sentence for sure. And then they did say that the other part of it, as far as board members being entitled to free entry, that does go through the GHSA. So you get your pass annually to those games or to those athletic events. So they said, they wouldn't recommend rescinding it, but at least keeping that first part to show that we do still have the senior citizen gold card.
Okay, so the part about the district giving the board members free entrance is not accurate. It's done through GSHA or whatever. Yeah. So that second sentence should be deleted. Is that what I understand?
Delete the second sentence. Also, board members shall be entitled. The first sentence is the one that should stay.
Okay, leave the first one. And it includes drama and music as well as athletics? Because that was the other question, I think.
Their understanding was yes, that it includes all that. 65 and older, you get a pass to attend those events at no cost.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions or comments about this one? Dr. Maddox, I know you had some concerns because you had a family member. Whoops, did we lose Dr. Maddox?
We did.
I think we did. Okay, well, we can't do anything until she gets back. Anyway, so maybe, let's see, how do we do this? We don't have a forum.
back.
Oh, there she's
Here
back.
she comes.
Hooray. Dr. Maddox?
You're
You're muted.
muted.
I'm sorry, I'm having problems over here. My computer's going in and out, my Zoom's going in and out, so I had to go out and come back in.
Okay, well, while you were gone, we confirmed that the senior citizen discounts for admissions is in place. Your comments about your family members, I think last time, were correct. So we've decided to leave that sentence, but delete the sentence about the board admissions because that's not done at the district level, that's done at the state level. So we were about to move on if there's any questions about what we've done with DFGA.
No, ma'am.
Okay, so can I get a motion to move it
Well,
forward?
let's just go
keep
through
going?
all of them and do
Okay.
it all one time.
All right.
Okay.
KF, so this one was also one we started to talk about last time. It has to do with community instructional resources. And I spoke with Mr. Harris about this. Do you want to fill us in, Mr. Harris, or shall I? Oops, you're muted.
Thank you. So annoying. Yeah, so me and Dr. Yeager talked a bit about this one. And I was telling her that, while this is around instructional programming, I think outside the building, there's also another policy that talks about community involvement in school board policies.
Which is coming up in our discussion today. Yeah.
Yes. And so, I still recommend that this policy be rescinded. We don't actually have a community instructional plan. I think, because we have programs that we do open to the community that are available through different programs, through the Career Academy and different various sources, whether high school start programming, we don't necessarily have a comprehensive instructional plan for community instruction. So this isn't in practice.
Yeah, so deleting that second paragraph for sure.
Right.
Do we, as a board, want to retain the first sentence, which is that we believe that the district should equip each student as a citizen of the community and encourage administrative and instructional personnel to rely on the community? Or are we just totally, we don't need this policy. This is already in the community engagement policy.
I think we talked about that first sentence. It is certainly a belief statement. It's not necessarily written as it's a belief statement in a policy versus a, policy being something that you abide by versus this being like a belief statement. The board believes that this should be a goal of the district. But
Uh-huh.
it's to the committee and the board what you all decide is probably the best way to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still in favor of eliminating policy unless we need it. I mean, I don't just to have policy for policy's sake.
Okay.
Because it does seem like it would fit more as a belief statement, part of a strategic plan.
Okay. So your recommendation would be to rescind.
Rescind it.
Okay. Dr. Maddox, do you have a thought about this? Uh-oh. She's frozen. It's a funny position she's frozen in. She looks like a mannequin. There she is. Now we see you. You're smiling. You're still muted though.
Yeah, I agree with Greg on that. I don't think we need to have that. I don't see really why we need that.
Okay, so recommendation to the board will be to rescind KF. Great, thank you. DFK. Okay, so DFK is the one where we looked at the reg last time and retained it as is. And then this gifts the policy. Mr. Schuneman and I were looking at it with Karina, and it was very awkwardly worded. So we went and looked at Rockdale County's wording and found it much simpler. And so in the new version, okay, yeah, there we go. So we've added the Rockdale County wording. The only thing Mr. Pruitt recommended was that we add Title IX. And so I looked at this to see where a good place to put it. And I think in the fourth paragraph, subject to the rules and regulations that govern the school system, comma, including Title IX. Would that be adequate, Mr. Pruitt, do you think? So on the end of the
That'll work, yeah.
Comma, including Title IX. Or especially Title IX, exclamation point.
I mean, and it's not legally required, but it's
a good
to be
reminder.
there. But Title IX is a law, and it's a nice reminder.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. So are there any thoughts or questions? Mr. Shineman, did you want to chime in?
No, I think you've covered it.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Why would the board accept or deny donations on the school system from any source? Wouldn't that still be operational and therefore the superintendent? Why is the board eligible to receive monies on behalf of the district? I'm just curious about that, the thinking behind that.
Well, we copied it from Rockdale. So let's see, Mr. Shineman, do you have a thought on that? It's a good point, Linda. Thank you.
Thought process was exactly what your thought was, is we yanked this from Rockdale County, and we thought it was a little bit more concise and straightforward. But yeah, I mean, it does say the board or superintendent designee. So yeah, that's a good point.
Would the board be in a position of accepting a donation? I guess.
Why would we? If the superintendent is operations and they're the CEO, why would the board all of a sudden get in the middle of that? And then where's the audit trail on that? And yeah, that's troubling to me. I think that needs to stay in some kind of accountability stream someplace.
Okay, so you would recommend just removing the board or just have the superintendent or designee shall accept or deny donations?
I think we leave it with the superintendent, and then if they want to designate somebody, then that's on them, but that comes as a part of their authority.
I think the distinctions in the second paragraph, it says that the superintendent, well, it says the board has to approve it if there are any obligations to the district. Otherwise, the superintendent can do it. Now, you might want to change that second paragraph, first sentence, to say the board has to approve it if it's beyond the superintendent's authority, which is $80,000 right now.
And I'm okay with the board approving it, period, regardless of whether it's $80,000 or not. But I don't think the board should be accepting anything, because we don't have a process. If the superintendent accepts it, then there is a process for the superintendent to then notify the board and the board to follow through, in my thoughts.
So Angela, remove in the first sentence, board or the in the very beginning. Yeah. So the superintendent or designate shall accept or deny donations to the school system from any source, including booster clubs, in accordance with the following provisions. Okay. Any gifts or donations presented to an individual school and or the total school system that would obligate the student. So Mr. Schuneman was very interested in this line because you don't want to accept something that's then going to require a budget to maintain or without planning, right? So this must be approved by the board.
And that's where I was saying that, you know, if you wanted to be consistent with the superintendent's purchasing authority, you could say that would only apply if the district's obligation is going to be over that $80,000 per year.
Okay, if, let's be clear about the it though, Angela. If the obligation is beyond.
So let me ask a question while you're wording that. So if somebody decided, gee, I want to give new drapes to Hillsman Middle School because I think that their theatrical program should have 3 layers of drapes. Well, if that's something they're giving at a school level, does the board need to be involved in that at all if there's no obligation beyond that gift?
I don't believe this policy says there's an approval process if it's no obligation.
That's what I'm trying to understand. I don't, yeah.
There would not be an approval process unless there was a financial obligation in excess of $80,000.
Or if it's significantly, and so then let's say that is the scenario, let's play that out further, then that would have to come back through Mr. Fisher's department, I would imagine, because they would be modifying a facility. And so I would imagine that approval process would have to kick in from the staff's perspective. Is that correct? If somebody wanted to add something to an existing facility and
I think the point is if it doesn't require any additional obligation that's in excess of $80,000, then the board doesn't get involved at all. It would go through the district as usual. Am I misunderstanding your question, Linda? I'm sorry, I'm not quite understanding.
I'm not sure I understand. I hear what you're saying and I have the same question, but let me see if I can clarify. I don't know what it would take to maintain a 3-tiered curtain system at a school, right? And so how would we know that there's an additional obligation? I'm not trying to make it difficult. I'm fine with the policy. Again, I just don't want to put people where we don't need to be, but then I don't want us to, again, back into a situation where we've accepted something and now all of a sudden we've got to maintain it.
Well, so, I mean, I guess upon our approval, if I guess you're asking is how do we decide how much the obligation is? Is that what you're saying? It seems like if it's a large gift, I think the idea was that if it's a large gift, like a building or I don't know, an automobile or something that's going to then require
I'm going to
maintenance.
say, Dr. Yeager, can I give an example?
Yes, yes, sir.
So I know a good example would be for the culinary arts program at the Career Academy. They received a donation of a vehicle, a SWAT truck, to turn into a food truck for that program. So the students could learn business operating skills through that CTAE program. So the truck was donated to the culinary arts program. And then of course the Cedar Shoals High School automotive program, they're renovating it. They're working on it, doing all the great automotive work, which there is a cost to do that, of course, to upkeep and, get the truck, in safe standards and in a position for students to actually use it and be transported in. And of course, the culinary arts program would operate it and provide food that they would then, of course, sell and do different items and products with. So that would be, I think, an item that actually does have, there was a cost associated with, and it's going to cost to probably provide gas and different things, but CTAE would cover, have to cover the cost of upkeep. So that may be that's an example that's happened in the past, probably 2 or 3 years, if that helps put it in context.
So that's where the comment about $80,000 makes sense. Only if the upkeep is going to be really, really expensive, do we need to get involved, right? I mean, so it sounds like it was an a district's decision to say, yes, we'll take this truck and work it into our budget to maintain it, but it wasn't something the board needed to approve because it's not in the $80,000 or more category. I can imagine if somebody donated a building or a large piece of property or something, then we might need to get involved. Is that what you were thinking, Mr. Schuneman, about, you know, the obligation part?
I think that's the intent of it. And as we're talking through this, I can see the gray area that Ms. Davis is kind of pointing out. You know,
Uh-huh.
we have in I think it's a regulation, I don't know if it's a policy, but we've got kind of a rubric on how we're valuing the donation, you know, or valuing the asset that's donated, but there's no specific metric to measure what the future obligation is going to be.
Mm.
So I don't know if we want to reword it just to say that the board would have to accept any donation in excess of $80,000 in value, and then it's kind of cut and dry, and there's not really any gray area. It's just, okay, the assets more than $80,000, so maybe there's a potential for a significant amount of future obligations.
Oh,
Let me suggest that an alternative would just be to rely on the discretion of staff, like I think Dr. Yeager said earlier. I mean, anytime you're evaluating what a gift will cost you, you're going, I mean, if it's electronics, you're going to ask Taylor. If it's operating, if it's buildings, you're going to ask Dexter, you know, whatever the case might be. I'm not sure if the value of the gift and the value of the maintenance are necessarily correlated. You know, there are plenty of $40,000 houses in this town that we could, you know, somebody could give you, they're going to cost you a lot more than 80.
That's a good point.
so do we need to add a sentence or and it says where the or the total school system that would obligate, we change that to as assessed by staff would obligate or something.
If
Does
the
that fix it?
obligation is beyond 80 grand.
As assessed by staff,
Well, I say as assessed by the superintendent.
by
I mean,
superintendent?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, not to throw a wrench in, but I'm just trying to think of, listen, when we were discussing, which I still hope we're on the back burner, but still being discussed, is you know, the 3DE program at Clark Central. I mean, that could be, my understanding was that that was going to be kind of put into Clark Central without a whole lot of cost from our end. But eventually it could accrue, you know, significant costs. So I'm trying to figure out, of course, that's a program and not a physical item. So,
Is it donated?
well, you could say that Junior Achievement is donating a program to Clark Central High School. I mean, you know, it's got monetary value. They were putting staff with it.
Are partnerships considered donations in that same way?
That's a good question.
I mean, because to me, that is a partnership program where we like agreed to utilize their curriculum and
Mhm.
activities and resources with our students. Is a little, to me, maybe a little different, but I don't know. Mike, I guess you'd have to weigh in on that.
Well, services are, I mean, I assume what we're talking about there is a service. So services can be donated too. So yeah, I mean, we're back to the old free horse analogy, you know, nobody wants a free horse. So if somebody's, you know, if I agree to donate legal services to you on some conditions that are going to obligate you to spend $100,000 on something other than direct payment for the services themselves, then yeah, I think that falls under this.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, I just threw that in there because I don't know. I mean, you know,
Do we want to move this one out of out of line and talk about it more, or what do you think? Should we send it up to the full board for discussion? We've spent about 10-15 minutes on this one. Maybe we should set it aside.
I mean, I would like to see, Dr. Thomas and Byron, have a discussion maybe. I don't know. I just don't know. Mike, I don't know if it seems like there should be more discussion from people who have certain expertise.
Well, I got to say, from my perspective, it doesn't bother me as is. I mean, whether it's, I don't know what this program is. I mean, there's no such thing as donating a program. I don't know if it's curriculum or services or what, but I mean, I think everything, the point is, and I think what it says now is anything that's given to you by whatever name, if it carries an obligation with it, the superintendent and her staff need to evaluate what obligations it carries. And if they think those could be over 80,000, they bring it to you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Is that, so you're okay with that, Greg?
Yeah, I'm okay
So
with that.
leave it be, and
Yeah.
I think there might be a little wordsmithing to be done in that middle sentence, but Dr. Maddox?
I agree.
Okay. All right. Shall we move on?
Yep.
Okay. DFL. Oops, that's the one we just did. No, wait, sorry, hang on. Investment earnings. Yeah, okay. So this is the one, sorry, that we recommended pulling out everything. So I kind of went back through it. We'd originally said just leave the first paragraph, but I think, Mr. Shineman, we might want to just leave the first 4 paragraphs. I played around with it in the Google Doc, Angela. Can we go to look at that? Basically, we're moving the whole investment guideline section to regs. And leaving the philosophy part that we have. We're not changing anything, we're just moving half of it into reg. As, and then we won't be working on it anymore. DFL. Sorry, I should have warned you. Okay, yeah, so so what I did was I put number 5, delegation of authority, and then just said to remove all the investment guidelines and move them into a reg. Is that, Mr. Schuneman, can you remember? I think that's what we said.
Yeah, that's consistent with our discussion when we met, and then also when we reviewed, I think it was a couple other counties where really when they got into the weeds of their investment policy, all the details that was housed in a regulation, and what is in our first, I guess, 4 paragraphs is more of the philosophy section. So yeah, it's consistent with what we discussed.
And make sure I'm getting the split right. It seemed like that paragraph about the delegating the investment authority, that should go in the policy, not in the reg. That part. Yeah. And then the rest. Okay. And yeah, it was like Atlanta Public Schools was one of the ones we were looking at that did that. Okay. So not really.
Does this remove board approval on investment policies? That's something we've had in the past. Are we saying we're not doing that anymore?
I think
change
it's
that from policies. I meant direction. Thank you.
So ultimately, Linda, I think you have argued that we not be in the business of approving regulations. So in that event, this regulation would become something outside of our approval. But at the same time, we would still have the policy in place that talks about safety and prudence and the philosophy of investments. But that's a good point. We would be potentially removing it from board approval about exactly how we invest.
I just want to know if it's covered someplace else under fiscal management, because when we established the account at BB&T to maximize I think the earnings on, back to the fund for Fund 101, I can't remember which fund number it was. But when that was established, that required board approval so that we knew that a major investment direction was changing or we were introducing a new program into the budget to which we are responsible and accountable. And so I'm asking if this policy takes that ability to do that away. And it's just a wording change, I think, if that's the case. And then again, a change in investment direction, I would think would come from board approval. In my opinion, I don't know. If we are fiscally responsible, what would give us knowledge of that change?
And then we also change a couple of years ago where the money is stored.
Every time we make a banking change, it has been brought, in the past, it's been brought to the board.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
When I read this policy, I think this covers more of the investment arm and kind of details what we are allowed to invest in. Whenever we are switching banks, that's something that we've brought to you in the past. I think that I don't know if that would be more along the lines of our purchasing policy, but it's definitely an RFP process that we go through. And so
that's actually in the guidelines there. If you look at the first paragraph of the blue highlighted, the board will designate, no, go back up where you were.
Yeah, that first paragraph.
Yeah, the board will designate the banks and financial institutions where it's invested. What the administration has discretion on, or what the guidelines set out, I guess, is the types of investments you could make at those institutions that the board has already chosen. So this would play like to the finance committee discussion last week. If Byron needs to move some money out of one account into another, as long as those are within the designated types of investments and with the institutions the board's chosen, he wouldn't have to come back for board approval to do that. Is that the way you read it, Byron?
it is. And if you'd scroll on down, everything that we transfer to and from is covered in those 1 through 9 down there.
Exactly.
So, but at some point, if we make this a reg, then it would no longer be board approval and you could add or subtract from that list as a financial officer, right? So is Linda's concern about losing our ability to approve what's sound or not sound? I mean, it seems to me as a board member, I don't really know what if I tell you I want you to be safe and prudent, then it's up to you to figure out which of these 9 things are the most safe and the most prudent, right? I shouldn't be telling you to put it in a CD instead of in a whatever.
Oh, I'm not even suggesting that. I'm suggesting simply the transparency of the transaction movement or the money movement within the district, just so that we're not caught at the end by some major surprise that says, "Oh, gee, this happened and we didn't know anything about it." That I'm looking for transparency in that fiscal arena.
I'm
They
not
have to
sure.
approve it, but I think there should be some disclosure of those kinds of things. And so, Byron, they can very easily come in the finance committee report. But again, just so that there is an awareness that things are happening within the district, because we are not the person, we're not trying to be the CFO. We're not trying to do any of that. But I think that if we are held fiscally responsible for the actions of that CFO, then that information needs to be reported to the board so that we're at least aware that changes are happening. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I mean, with going along with what you said, if we pulled this down to a reg, and if you're not approving regs, then we could potentially update our, whatever eligible investments there are. There could be a 10th one that might not be something that you would approve and be able to oversee. Is that what you're getting at?
I don't think we're overseeing any of these now. So
No, but
that's not the concern. What I'm concerned about is simply just the knowledge. It's like we decided to collapse Fund 100 and 101, right? That's something that if you had not reported that to us, we wouldn't be aware of that movement. And again, it's my hypothetical here. So what I'm looking for is the knowledge that those things occurred because it could lead to something else.
But
And
that's
so the-
not in this policy, Linda. That's maybe in how we, I mean, this doesn't talk about informing us. This is just what he's allowed to do.
Well, it said board approval up earlier, so that's what I was going back, but okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I
board
was
approval.
wondering if is there a policy on financial reports? I know, seems like the state law requires either quarterly or semi-annual reports to the board, but we do it every month. I don't know if that's by policy or just by custom.
By policy, I think I at least saw it in policy at one point, and again, I haven't dug in here to make sure it's still there. But so I don't want to belabor this. Again, my concern, I'm not trying to manage regs or do anything with regs, but what I am trying to avoid is a lack of transparency, especially when it comes to money and assets of the district.
Well, then it sounds like we want to keep this as is.
I will say I do agree with Linda on that in terms of the transparency, you know.
Okay,
Like,
so we
yeah,
keep it entirely as policy then.
I think for right now, I think based on kind of priorities of what we need to do, and first and foremost.
Okay. So DFL, Angela, we just, we reviewed and retain as is what I'm hearing. Because we really weren't making, Ms. Schuneman, I don't think we were making any changes at all. We were just splitting it into regs versus policy. And, you know, if there's no enthusiasm for doing that, then we don't need to do it.
Okay.
All right, moving on. We've got DJCB and its reg, both of which are recommended to be rescinded by Mr. Pruitt. I think Mr. Schuneman and I were a little more generous to the retaining bits and pieces of it, but Mr. Pruitt definitely seemed to think it was all to be rescinded because it has to do with tax shelters and annuities and things that we don't do anymore. Is that the correct interpretation?
That sounds right.
And the wage garnishment is entirely not in our control, right? If somebody tells you to garnish wages for some other debt, then that's out of our control as well, right?
Right.
So the recommendation is to rescind both of them. Mr. Shineman, did you want to say anything more about that?
Concur. This might be one of those areas where, for instance, garnishments, that's governed not by our own policy, but state and federal law. And Mike would speak more to that. But the other part was the tax sheltered annuities. And this is definitely outdated. We just underwent the most recent RFP and conversion to the single vendor with AIG for both of our 403B and 457 savings plans. So the bottom half is definitely out of date. And then the garnishment section, I believe the thought process was that's governed elsewhere.
And the reg is similarly out of date and just pull it up. Yeah. Again, it's all about sort of the process of doing the garnishments. And again, that's covered by other laws.
It's not up to us.
Okay.
It's like the same issue we have with unemployment.
Yeah.
So I move that we strike, that we recommend to the board that these two, both the policy and the reg, be rescinded.
Okay. So I feel like I want to have a vote since it's 5:15 and at any point we might lose Dr. Maddox. And can we maybe vote on the first six and get them moved forward? So in summary, we have a revision to DFGA, rescinding KF, a revision of DFL. Oops. a revision of DFK, sorry. A review, no changes to DFL. And then rescinding of DJCB and DJCBR1. Can I get a motion for those 6 to move up to the board for the work session?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Okay, phew, now I can take a breath. All right. DJEH, change orders. So this was a very complicated process, and we shared it with Mr. Galbraith. He complained a little bit, as I recall, about approval processes until he was pointed out to him that it was superintendent or designee, which presumably he would be the designee. And we recommended, Angela, if you could go to the Google Doc to switch the language to, I believe it was also Rockdale County example, which is much simpler, and then move the details into a reg. I think, Mr. Schuneman, am I remembering that correctly?
I don't recall moving those.
Or just leave it alone?
I thought we were just changing it to the yellow highlighted section.
Oh, okay, so we don't need all the details in the current policy.
I think it's looks like a duplicate.
Okay. It includes the 25,000 threshold.
Are we, Dr. Yeager, are we deleting the remainder of the policy?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. I think Mr. Shineman said yes. Is that right? We don't need all those details?
Is y'all's version showing any changes on the website?
No.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any either.
Okay. Well, so again, this was, let me find my notes. This was an attempt to make it simpler and less.
Maybe we just don't have the revision loaded here with the agenda.
That may be true, in which case you haven't looked at it then. Is that right?
Well, I think I did, because I look at my memo and I'm talking about, it's a shorter one. So maybe it was emailed to me separately, but it's not loaded here now.
Yeah, that could be. So I think Angela's loading it in right now. Is that what you're doing? Looks like.
So I need to refresh.
Just refresh, yeah.
Wait, so wait, so am I striking through the remainder of the policy?
So what I have in my notes, that the wording could be simpler and push the rest of the details into a reg is what I have in my notes. But Mr. Shineman, that's not what you remember. You don't think these 1 through 7 need to be restated in a reg? We just are putting the first 2 sentences.
One of the things you might want to take a look at is number 7, because it does say, in the event of an emergency arises, the superintendent is authorized to approve such order if the change order does not exceed $100,000. So that would go against
The 80, yeah.
just the 80 and the 25 grand.
Well, what's confusing to me is that we're kind of combining general budget with SPOS money. I mean,
They're separate, right? I
yeah.
thought these were the guidance. I thought this was according to SPLOST only here. Yeah, and I'm not sure
Well,
who takes because that's
No, actually, your policies aren't any different. The fund source doesn't matter. So it wouldn't matter where the funds came from.
But for instance, I mean, this is the only policy we have, I think, that actually recognizes the Community Oversight Committee, right? And our obligation to keep them abreast.
So we only have the Community Oversight Committee looking at SPOS funds. So do we have a policy that addresses SPOS funding that kind of puts this all together for us in a package?
The purchasing policies cover all fund sources.
So nothing unique for SPOS.
Right.
Boy, that's interesting.
Maybe this one needs to go back to policy and let's look at what that should be since we're in it,
Well,
right?
so this one is just about change orders. It's not about SPOST. It's just about change orders. And we had an example of a change order that we had to approve last month, I believe, because there was a change in it was the track and field for the high schools. We
Right.
had to approve
But it was
it.
all SPOS funding. So we never even, I don't think I ever saw a change order until SPOS. Well, I haven't been on here before that.
No,
but
no, no. This
in
was through the
construction
board.
budget too.
This was
Yeah,
through
you're
the
right.
board.
Yeah.
We had to approve it on the board last month to spend more money to fix the track.
Oh, yeah, I'm saying that's fine, but what I'm saying is that my experience has only been with SPOS dollars that we were spending. So I'm not sure that I'm still trying to get to. I thought the change order threshold was much lower. I thought it was $15,000 or something. I may be wrong on that, but I'm just curious as to where we address. Well, why would SPOS be any different? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
It's not. It's just that we tend to spend SPOS dollars on large building change orders, facility change orders. Because they're SPOS, that's what SPOS money is for facilities.
Like this one says, if you supersede 100,000, but yet we have, then it is brought to the board. If I'm reading this right, I mean, the superintendent is authorized to 100,000, and yet in our spending policy is 80,000. So I don't know.
Yeah, so this one is an old policy that needs to be fixed. So that's why we're doing this.
Well, not necessarily, because see,
No?
this is about this is about a purchase you've already approved. I mean, typically a building project is going to be over 100,000, and typically it's going to be out of SPOS dollars. But this is talking about changes to a contract the board's already approved. So what you're doing is actually setting a lower limit than 80 for changes to that project at 25,000, unless it's an emergency, in which case you're setting a higher limit, which is 100. But in both cases, it's already an expense over 80 that the board's approved.
Attorney Pruitt, is this just change orders for construction, or with this, let's say, Mr. Duke ordered laptops and it was approved at a cost of $100 per laptop, but because of the pandemic, rates have gone up and now they're $150 per laptop. So would that be considered, or are we just talking about construction?
According to the first line, it's only construction.
Okay, that's what I thought. So would we have construction coming out of other pots?
I mean, conceivably you could. I mean, for example, you've got Fund 101 that you've got some money from selling properties that you're going to use over at Prince Avenue, but you're probably going to use some SPOS dollars there as well. So.
Okay.
Okay. Do I hear we're good moving forward, or do we want to kick this one back?
I mean, do we have another policy that specifies our relationship to the COC? Or do we need one, or is that
It wouldn't be in this policy.
Or is that state law? I mean, it is state law, isn't it?
No, that's not state law.
So
You want to create a new policy about our relationship with SPLOST? That would not be in a change order policy, though.
Yeah.
This is about change orders.
Okay.
I don't know. Mr. Schuneman, do you have a thought about whether we need to have a policy about SPLOST?
I think we've got our purchasing policy that covers general fund money, SPOS money. It doesn't matter what the fund source is, like Mr. Pruitt said. This policy is just specifically addressing, for instance, if you already approved a purchase order to build a school at some greatest maximum price, and then they come back to us and say, hey, there's something wrong with the way something that's underneath the soil. I don't know.
But
Yeah, we
that
had-
the granite that was on Clark Center.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then we have to come back to you and say, hey, the greatest maximum price was 22 million. Now we got a change order. It's exceeding $25,000. We got to bring that back to you to approve more.
I'm actually fine with that.
Additional threshold of $25,000. If a change order, so we're not talking about any other type of purchases, just specific to a change order. If it exceeds 25 grand, then we got to come back to the board and say, hey, please review and approve this.
Right. So this says, if the total cost is 25,000 or less, the superintendent or designee may approve the change order and report such action to the board at its next meeting. All other change orders must be approved. So if they're greater than 25,000. I like that.
And then there are emergency situations conceivably.
So you want to retain an emergency part of it?
Well, I'm just thinking that when we hit that piece of granite, when we were expanding Clark Central, we don't want to stop production or construction while we get board approval. And that certainly was going to cost more than 100,000. I don't know.
Is that an emergency?
Well, if you got a whole crew there waiting to pour concrete and they can't do it, I don't know. I don't know that not much about construction. So.
Yeah, that's actually the way it's defined there in number 7. If the architect or engineer certifies to the superintendent that delay will result in substantial liability. So, I mean, yeah, most of your construction contracts do say, I mean, there's provisions in there for additional compensation to the contractor if there's owner cause delay, and there's provisions about getting pretty quick turnaround on change order requests. So yeah, I mean, if construction had to stop for 3 weeks to wait for board approval to remove another 100 tons of rock, yeah, I mean, that's an emergency.
Okay, so do you want, sounds like Mr. Davis, you want to take what's written in 7
Yeah,
and
let's
stick it
just-
back up underneath? Okay, Dr. Thomas, does that make sense to you?
Makes sense. Yes, that makes sense to me.
Okay, awesome. Ready to send up? Any other questions or comments? Okay, it's 5:25. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 plus a reg left, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Okay, so DJEIA has to do with sales calls. And as I recall, we were going to replace the existing text with a simpler language, although it looks like we only have one sentence. Is this the sentence we cut it down to? Hang on, if I go back into the policy manual. DJEIA. Oops. Nope. Next one down. There you go. Yeah, so this is the simplified language. Solicitation, when approved, must be outside teaching hours and can only be accomplished as the principal with teacher's approval directs. It's an awkward sentence. All violations should be reported to the superintendent immediately. So the original policy, I think, was longer than that. Is that right? We didn't have it striked out though. Hang on.
I think that's actually your old policy.
Is that the old policy?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's the one that's been in there.
DJE.
Yeah, that's your old one.
That's the old one. Okay, the new one was the Rockdale County version. What happened to that? Did it fall away? Is it in a comment somewhere? Hang on.
I see it's quoted in my memo part and changes proposed.
Mhm.
Okay. That's in the Google Doc, right?
It's on board docs, Angela. If you go back to the agenda, it's right there at the top under changes proposed.
Oh, gosh, thank you. We pasted it in there. Yeah, that one. Thank you. Yeah, vendors of any product are not permitted to operate on school property without permission of the principal and or superintendent. In no situation shall any vendor be allowed to make sales calls or demonstrations which would disrupt the school program or operations or require time of an employee from his assigned job tasks. We could say his, her,
Mhm.
there. Yeah, which is better than I think, the awkward sentence that we had before. Okay, phew, I'm glad we found that. Thank you. And I believe legally you thought that was fine, Mr. Pruitt?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think, Greg? Dr. Maddox?
Yeah,
That's fine.
yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. too.
Okay,
Before we move on, I do want to point out that he, she language should also be corrected in the one that we just, that 7 that I said that we are gonna put in there or leave in there
oh,
as he at the very last sentence. So I think we need
the superintendent shall report
Yeah.
his approval, his,
Right.
her,
his, her, okay.
or we could just change it.
Did we do his, her? Can you just take his, her out?
Shall report approval of the change, just take,
Yeah.
shall approve, just not report, just, oh, well, no, shall report
Shall
approval of
report
the change.
approval. Yeah, and the
Okay.
same thing in the previous sentence, the his, her stuff starts to get tedious, and then it also means we're gonna go through and make that change everywhere, so it would be good to avoid it if we can.
Okay.
But I'm fine with DJEIA as
Great.
Good.
Awesome.
It's easier for building leaders to follow, because I was thinking like sometimes, people might come and, I don't know, it may be books or something, and teachers will go look on their planning or at their lunch, really not during planning, but at lunchtime, or something like this. So that gives a little more discretion.
Great. Okay. All right, moving on. KCB is the community involvement policy, which we discussed earlier. And this one was just minorly edited to add in collaboration with, or the superintendent in collaboration with the board instead of the board. And then I believe Mr. Pruitt recommended we delete the part about school councils. Yeah. That's on the 3rd paragraph after
Yeah,
the yellow edit.
yeah.
So this is pulling in LSGTs, which were not mentioned before. Otherwise, I think the fundamental philosophy is the same.
And doing away with school councils, right? Because I don't see it crossed out on my copy.
She just did it just now. Yeah.
Okay. I'm fine.
Okay. Okay, KG was the school facilities. It was a very minor edit, but then Mr. Pruitt made some recommendations. asking whether Mr. Fisher, Mr. Galbraith were consulted in the conversation. I don't know if, Mr. Harris, did we bring them into this discussion?
No, so we may need to bring this one back to them.
Okay,
That one. Yeah, actually KG and KGR1.
yeah,
So before
okay.
Mr. Fisher.
And it would be my recommendation that we strike the two final paragraphs about political candidates and charter schools. It's my feeling that those are sort of covered by non-school groups and don't need to be called out specifically. But that would just be my suggestion. But yeah, I think we probably should kick these two back to make sure that we have their input.
I'll send it to them both.
Okay. So, and then finally, KHB is the contest, which has been simplified dramatically. Thank you very much, Mr. Davis and Ms. Gallagher and Mr. Harris. It now reads, students will be encouraged to enter contests or competitions under the guidance of teachers or school administrators. The administration is responsible for assuring the value of the contest or competition to students. In alignment with Clark County School District's equity policy, all who qualify will be given the opportunity and encouraged to participate. However, no student may be required to take part in a contest sponsored by an outside organization as part of his or her course. So we could remove the his, her, a course as part of a course.
Their course is good.
Okay. Comments or questions about this one? I tend to think they did a good job simplifying it. Mr. Harris, did you have any other notes or comments?
No, I appreciate Mr. Davis and Ms. Gallagher on this one. I think we worked. That was one I remember us having substantial discussion on.
Good job. Okay. Okay, and the legal is no legal implications. Okay, Dr. Thomas, any comments? You okay with this one? Oops, you're muted, but.
I read her lips. She said,
Yeah, this is good. I could think of a couple of contests that people may or may not have issue with just because of sponsors. So I think this takes away any requirement for students to participate.
Okay. All right. Shall we move these forward to the board? Okay, reminder, DJEH is a revision. Sales calls is a revision. KCB is a revision. And KHB is a revision. And we are moving 10 and 11 off the docket.
so moved.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I
Okay, awesome. All right, so thank you. That's all we have for today. We'll put it on the work sessions for tomorrow. Angela, I need to get with you and make sure we have those explanations clearly marked for the work session. But I think with the exception of the one we just pulled, that gets us through all the D and all the Ks on time. So thanks to everyone for all their contribution to that effort. It's been great. Any last questions or comments before we?
Go ahead.
I was going to move to adjourn, but you can go ahead.
No, not adjourned just yet. Although you know I'm always ready to. I just want to suggest that we look at policy DO. It was something I was going to wait on really until next year when we got things done, but I'll send stuff into the policy committee about my concerns about that policy, but I wanted to alert you that that's coming, but I would like for us to look at that.
At DO?
Which policy?
DO, school properties disposal procedures.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess there's that one, and then there's also the other one that had to do with small business as well as local business preferences, point systems. That was, we had that one on the discussion at the last meeting. But yeah, so maybe, is there an issue specifically you want to tell Mr. Schuneman about this, Dr. Maddox, or do you just want to review it?
Well, I want to review it. It's for me, it's an equity concern in terms of the way that we dispose. It started with me with technology surplus. And I just believe that we should offer, technology equipment. And, when, recently we had the chairs, it was corrected, it's all good, but I just want us to look to providing those to our community first. Before allowing people from other places or large industry to come in and buy up everything. So that's to make it simple, that's my concern.
Okay. I guess, would that be Mr. Harris working on with Mr. Schuneman, or, and then for discussion, or do you want to actually propose changes? Why don't we bring it up put it on the agenda for the next policy meeting and we can figure it out.
That sounds good.
Okay, great.
Thank
And we'll also discuss the other one, the other D
you.
policy.
Go ahead, Greg, go for it.
Well, no, not yet, because I got one thing I just want to put on the radar. And again, I leave it to this policy committee or after the first of the year. I'm fine with it, but I'm still I still remain uneasy with the 80,000 limit. I think it's too high. And I don't, like I said, it's not something that Cognia brought attention to. It's something that it may be something that maybe the new board members would be more appropriately want to be involved in. But it is something that's important to me at some point as a single board member.
Okay,
To
so that's
revisit that discussion.
DJE, that's DJE, okay.
Right.
Yeah, if we can set that one until January, I would be thrilled, but
I mean, I'm fine with that.
okay,
I mean, I'm just putting it out there.
Dr. Yeager, that is the second D that was on the discussion for next meeting.
DJE,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, R1, R1 though, yeah. R1 was the part about, at the very bottom, it talks about giving points in the RFPs to, first it says small business or local businesses. I thought it was in there somewhere.
Is that one that we had delayed pending working with Keen on this disparity study and sort of tying in the MBE program? And I know Veronica has reached out, and Dr. Thomas she's been working with Veronica, and we're moving forward on that. So.
Okay, so I had understood from that conversation that we could very easily just add small business to this policy without any fuss, and that would be a low maintenance or an easy fix, but it sounds like you're still working on it as the other option. So put it off also till January is what I hear. Mr. Pruitt, sorry.
Yeah, I think so, because we have to define small business.
Yep.
And I mean, if it was going to be delayed forever, I'd say, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. But if there's a way we can in the next, 2 or 3 months, maybe work with Keen and tie this in with some progress on our MBE program as well, that seems to make sense.
Okay. Maybe we can work on it in December as a policy, so it'll be post Cognia at that point for maybe getting on the board by January, rather, so we can work on it during policy committee meetings in December. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. All right.
I move that we adjourn.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Everyone have a safe evening, and we'll see you on Thursday. Bye.
Bye-bye. That's tomorrow.
Bye. tired.
Greg's gonna be here a day early.
Yeah.
Bye, y'all.